Welcome back to Northern Tales, where silence is broken and every woman's story finds its way back to her own voice. Tonight we continue what we trade in silence. Part 4. Zuwaira was offered a way out of hardship. What began as one desperate decision brought her 500,000 naira, but not peace. She told herself it will happen only once. One sacrifice, one secret, one chance to breathe again. But some choices do not end when the money is counted. They follow you quietly into the next chapter of your life. Because while the hunger had eased, something else had awakened. And now we begin part 4. It took almost a full month before Zuwaira touched the money. The 500,000 remained hidden in her bag, wrapped carefully in clothes as though covering it would silence what it meant. But silence did not come. Instead, the days that followed were heavy. She moved through them like someone carrying an invisible weight. Some mornings, she could not get out of bed. Some nights, sleep refused to come. When it did, it broke easily. There was guilt, the kind that sat quietly in the chest and tightened without warning. There was fear of what she had done, fear of what it meant, fear that God had seen everything and turned away from her. Then there was confusion. She did not know whether to feel ashamed or relieved. There was disbelief. How could money come so easily? How could one decision bring more cash than months of suffering? There was temptation, a dangerous whisper that said, if it was this easy once, it could be easy again. And beneath it all, there was sadness. Because even with money in her possession, peace still felt far away. She smiled less, spoke less, laughed only when others were watching. Then one afternoon, after returning from class, exhausted and hungry, something changed. She had not prepared food the weekend before. There was nothing waiting for her. Her stomach ached as she walked to the canteen. Even there, habit followed her. She ordered the cheapest thing she could think of: rice and stew, one meat, which was 2,500 naira. She stood aside as the woman served her. Then her eyes drifted to the glass display beside the counter. Inside, there were rows of peppered chicken thighs glistening under the light, golden, spicy, rich with oil and promise. 2,500 naira each. Zuwaira stared at them longer than she meant to. Before she would have looked away. Before she would have told herself such things were for other people. But not today. Today she reached into her bag. Add one, she said quietly, pointing at the chicken. The woman smiled and placed it on her plate. Zuwaira carried the food to the corner table and sat down slowly. For the first time in a long while, she was not calculating how to survive the week. For the first time, she looked at a decent meal and knew she could afford it. That was how it started. Not with greed, not with extravagance, not with some wild plan to become someone else. It began with relief. Zuwaira discovered the quiet comfort of not worrying about her next meal, the simple luxury of hunger no longer deciding her mood. Soon, the meals she used to cook and ration carefully became less frequent. The containers of pre-cooked food she once depended on stayed untouched for days. Instead, she began stopping at the canteen more often. Rice and stew, jollof rice, beans and plantain, sometimes swallow. And on certain days when she wanted to feel like life was being kind to her, she added a soft drink. A chilled bottle beside her tray, cold against her palm, sweet on her tongue. Small things, but to Zuwaira they felt like proof that suffering had loosened its grip. The money remained hidden in the old handbag she brought from home, a faded bag with worn handles and a broken inner zipper. She refused to let the clinic transfer the money into her bank account. That account had been opened for her by her father. Even now, she imagined strange possibilities. What if someone at the bank noticed? What if they knew her family? What if word traveled back home? What if her father asked questions she could never answer? When she told Khadija, Khadija had laughed until tears gathered in her eyes. You think bankers are watching your account like a film? She had asked. Zuwaira did not laugh. Fear did not need to be logical to feel real. So every day, she dipped her hand into the handbag and pulled out what she needed. Sometimes 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, or even more. Always telling herself she was being careful. Always believing there was still plenty left. Then one afternoon, she followed Khadija to a boutique. At first, she said she was only going to look. The shop was cool and bright, lined with mirrors and soft lighting. Mannequins stood elegantly dressed in flowing abayas. Shelves displayed handbags that looked expensive even before you touched them. Shoes gleamed from polished racks. Everything smelled of perfume and possibility. Khadija moved through the store like someone who belonged there. Try this one. No, this color suits you better. Take the bag too. Zuwaira laughed nervously and resisted at first. But resistance became curiosity. Curiosity became desire. Desire became permission. By the time they left, she was carrying a shopping bag in both hands. A new abaya, a pair of shoes, a handbag. Total 158,000 naira. When the cashier announced the amount, Zuwaira's heart jumped. But she still paid. And as they stepped outside into the sun, bags swinging at her side, she felt something dangerous rising in her chest. Not guilt, power. Just 3 months after the donation, Zuwaira woke early for class and reached into the old handbag for lunch money. Her fingers searched once, then again. She froze. Inside the bag, there was only 1,500 naira left. She emptied everything onto the bed. Receipts, lip balm, key, a pen, crumpled tissue. But no hidden bundle, no forgotten notes, no mistake. There was only 1,500 naira left. Her heart began to race. Where did the money go? The first thought came quickly. Someone had stolen it. Who else could explain it? She looked around the room in silence, her eyes briefly resting on each of her roommates' belongings. But she said nothing. No accusations, no questions, no drama. She dressed for class and left with a storm inside her chest. All through the lecture, she had almost nothing. Her body was present, but her mind was elsewhere. Then another voice began to speak inside her, a quieter one, a more honest one. Calculate it. Reluctantly, she started counting backwards. The boutique trip, 158,000. The new wrapper she had bought because she loved the fabric, 35,000 naira. The backpack she bought for herself, 25,000 naira. The daily canteen meals, sometimes 3,000, 5,000, or even more. Soft drinks, snacks, little things that never felt dangerous because they were small. One by one, the numbers gathered like witnesses, and slowly, painfully, the truth stood before her. No one had stolen the money. She had spent it herself. For the first time, Zuwaira understood something no one had taught her. Money can sound huge from a distance, but once it enters your hands, it can disappear quietly. She sat still after class, humbled by the lesson, and with that understanding came another one. She remembered how she had silently judged Khadija when she spoke of visiting different clinics, donating again and again despite warnings. At the time, it had sounded reckless, greedy, and weak. Now it sounded different. Now she understood how quickly relief becomes habit and habit becomes need. That afternoon, she went to the canteen and paid with her debit card. Only then did she remember her monthly stipend had entered 20,000 naira. With the 15,000 naira already in the account, she now had 35,000 naira left. She stared at the balance on her phone for a long moment. Once 35,000 naira would have felt like security. Now it felt frighteningly small. That evening, when the others were out and the room was quiet, she turned to Khadija. Her voice was low. It's finished. Khadija looked at her. The money? Zuwaira nodded. For a moment, shame burned in her throat. Then she said the words she never thought she would say. Take me to another clinic. So this was how it began. Not as a plan, not as a life she chose in one moment, but step by step, need by need, justification by justification. Zuwaira went for her second donation. This time they paid her 450,000. She noticed the difference immediately, less than before. When she asked why, the nurse only smiled and said rates change. But she took the money anyway. She told herself it was enough, more than enough. She will be wiser this time, more careful, more disciplined. To her surprise, the money lasted only 6 weeks. It vanished the same way the first one had, quietly, in pieces, from food to clothes, little comforts she had once lived without. Small spending that never looked dangerous until it was added together. Khadija watched her panic with the calm of someone who had seen it before. This is why I told you, she said. Money finishes faster when you already know how to enjoy it. Then came another warning. We have to be careful now, Zuwaira. The clinics must not know we are going too often, Khadija said. If they suspect, they can reject us. She explained how some girls moved between clinics, how names were changed, how phone numbers were switched, how stories were adjusted depending on where they went. Sometimes they used fake names, sometimes they pretended it was their first time. Zuwaira listened in silence. What once sounded shocking now sounded practical, normal even. That frightened her more than anything. Khadija also made her open a new bank account. This one is yours, she said. No family questions, no fear. And you can track what you spend. It made sense. For the first time, Zuwaira could see the money come in and go out clearly. Transfers, withdrawals, purchases. Numbers lined neatly on the screen. But clarity did not become control. Even with the account, the spending continued. And soon, so did the donations. Every 2 months, like a cycle, she no longer questioned. The injections, the scans, the procedure, the payment, then life after all that, the spending, then again and again. Each time she said it was temporary. Each time it became easier to believe herself. Until one evening, lying awake in the dark, a thought entered her mind and would not leave. When did survival become habit? Zuwaira had accumulated so many clothes that she no longer had space to keep them. Abayas hung behind doors, shoes were stacked under the bed, handbags filled corners and boxes meant for books. What once felt luxurious had become clutter. And there were new expenses now: laundry, dry cleaning, replacing things she barely used. Quietly, she was beginning to understand something else about money. Having it could also be a burden. The abayas she once admired in shop windows no longer moved her. The shoes she once dreamed of buying now looked ordinary. The handbags that once felt like status now felt like weight. Even food had changed. The canteen meals, the peppered chicken, pizza, yogurt, none of it excited her anymore. Most days, what she wanted could not be brought there. She longed for her mother's miyan kuka, the kind served hot with pepper, the kind that filled more than hunger. And deeper than that, she longed for something harder to name. She missed the girl she used to be, the girl who counted every naira but slept with a cleaner heart, the girl who worried about survival yet she still felt whole, the girl who had not learned how easily desperation can bargain with innocence. Sometimes it felt as though she had betrayed that version of herself, as though in solving one kind of hunger, she had created another. It had been 2 years since her first donation. Khadija and Faiza had graduated and moved on with their lives. Their beds had long been occupied by new faces, new voices, new stories. Zuwaira had only 1 year left, And for the first time in a long while, she stopped running long enough to think. One evening, she sat alone with a notebook, her ATM card, and her phone. She opened her banking app, checked her balance twice. She had saved up 1.3 million naira. She stared at the number in silence, not with excitement, with clarity. She began to write all her final year expenses, what she would need after graduation. For the first time, the money had direction, purpose, and boundaries. She had already reduced her spendings. The careless habits were fading. The hunger to prove something through purchases had gone quiet. Then she closed the notebook and whispered words that felt both frightening and freeing. My egg donation days are over. She expected to feel fear. Instead, she felt relief. When Khadija and Faiza returned for their graduation, the three girls went out after the ceremony to celebrate properly. They chose a popular shopping mall, somewhere bright and lively, where the air smelled of perfume, fried food, and new money. For a few hours, it felt like old times. They laughed over memories, teased each other, took pictures they promised to post later, spoke about plans after graduation and the uncertainty of what came next. Khadija and Faiza had both saved money before leaving. They were already discussing business ideas, side hustles, and what to do before NYSC. Their plates arrived, the table filled with food, rice, chicken, fries, drinks. Then behind them a child began crying. Not ordinary crying, the kind that takes over a room. Loud, dramatic, unstoppable. A toddler was screaming in Hausa, I don't want it. Give me another one. The woman at the table laughed softly. Zuwaira smiled too. It reminded her of home, of her younger siblings fighting over snacks, refusing food, demanding impossible things with full confidence that someone would listen. Then her smile faded. That voice, it sounded strangely familiar, like her younger sister when she was small. Slowly, Zoera turned to look. At the table sat a family, an older man, perhaps in his mid-50s, his wife elegant and composed, maybe in her late 40s, a young girl in hijab seated beside them, likely the nanny, and the child. The moment Zoera saw her, her heart nearly stopped. The little girl was around 1 year old, maybe a little older, and she looked exactly like her younger sister. Not similar, exactly. The same eyes, the same cheeks, the same shape of mouth. Even the stubborn expression on her tiny face felt familiar. Zuwaira gasped. Khadija and Faiza turned immediately. What happened? Khadija asked. Zuwaira forced a smile so quickly it hurt. Nothing, she said softly. I just remembered home. But inside her, something had shattered open. That night back at the hostel, sleep did not come. She lay awake, staring into the darkness. Is that my child? Again and again, the question returned. She remembered every clinic visit, every form she signed, every egg she had given away. She tried to reason with herself. It could be coincidence. Children resemble many people. She was being irrational, but reason had no power over what she felt. By morning, she was trembling. The days that followed dragged her into a darkness deeper than guilt. She stopped eating properly, stopped attending classes regularly, ignored calls, spoke only when necessary. Some mornings, she cried before even understanding why. Some nights, she replayed the child face until dawn. The fear was no longer about what she had done. It was about what might exist because of it. She knew it was wrong to think that way. Wrong to imagine claiming what was never hers. Wrong to choose to chase strangers because of resemblance and regret it. But she could not let it go. Somewhere inside her, a desperate vow was forming. She would find that family again. She had to know the truth, even if the truth destroyed her. This is Northern Tales. Zoera thought the past was buried, but some choices do not stay where we leave them. Sometimes they return with a face and call us by name. Will she find the family? And if she does, what will she do with the answer? We continue in the next episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.